Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Mute buttons, how do they work? Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. It must be a Friday because, man, things are really relaxed here. But everyone, I hope you're doing well. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and of course, your co-host. Actually, I am awful with this. Try it again.
Marissa, good morning.
There we go. I have not had enough coffee, but everyone, hey, how you doing? Welcome into the program. Today on the show, in the second part of the program, with any time we have left, we will be doing computer and technology news where we bring you new products, new services, things like that. It should be a lot of fun. And hey, you can definitely stick around for that. But in the first part of the show, that's where the real meat of the show is. We have a guest, and not just any guest, but today we have an author. The book is The End of Everything, if you haven't heard of that. And of course, the topic of, well, the universe, the dramatic cosmic end to it all. Hey, we're going to talk about it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm sure this is a topic that, you've probably seen maybe a documentary or two about it, but, the science changes and the understanding changes, and we're really looking forward to talking with, of course, Dr. Katie Mack, and we'll bring her on in just a moment. But before we do, everyone, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, all shows, and of course the podcast, articles, reviews, show notes, everything that you need to know about Computer America. You can find it on our website. Let's see, podcasts heard everywhere, social media at Computer America, blah, blah, blah. Carissa, how you doing?
Pretty good. A little sleepy. Pretty
good. Well, we're going to wake you up. We're going to wake everyone up. And, hey, why not talk about, I guess the opposite of the Big Bang. Everyone, let's, why don't we just go ahead, bring in our guest, get this started, and have some fun with it. So, as I was saying before, Dr. Katie Mack, she is a theoretical astrophysicist and, of course, author of The End of Everything, all caps. Very dramatic and, of course, I think rightfully so. Dr. Mack, thank you so much for coming on to Computer America. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for joining us. And and as I said before, I think that a lot of people have been, loosely exposed to this topic, but I'm looking forward to, kind of seeing how you explored it. So, before we get into all that, I would love a bit of background on yourself and, why you decided to, kind of write this book and, kind of your background.
Yeah, so I'm an astrophysicist and I study cosmology. So that's the universe from beginning to end, what it's made of, how it works, all of the big questions. And my background is that I've been in this field for a while. I've been fascinated by the universe since I was a little kid. This is the stuff that I get really excited about. These big questions, this kind of ultimate, fate of the cosmos stuff is really exciting to me. So Yeah, I study a lot of different things in cosmology in my kind of day job as a researcher and a professor. I study dark matter, which is this mysterious stuff that holds galaxies together. I study the early universe, and recently I've been getting very interested in theories about the ending.
That and I think some people could call that depressing to call getting interested about the ending. So there's a lot to cover there, and of course we're going to explain a lot of this. And I didn't tell you this before the show, but we assume really no. I almost said intelligence. No prior knowledge on the part of our audience before this. So we're going to hopefully break down kind of everything, give a loose definition at least. So you've been exploring a lot, researching a lot, and of course a lot of these topics, including things like dark matter. If you don't mind, everything that you just talked about, how recent are a lot of these advancements? Because personally I've only heard about dark matter maybe in the past 10 years or so. I'm sure in the research side you guys have been kind of looking for it and trying to identify it for quite a while longer. How is the field in general right now? Is there a lot of discovery going on?
Well, dark matter is an interesting one. We've known about it. Well, the first sort of suggestions of dark matter came in the 1930s, where astronomers first started realizing that there was more stuff out there than we could see. And in the 1970s, it became really clear that galaxies are dominated by dark matter. Most of the matter in the universe is this invisible stuff, and we don't know what it is. We don't understand it. And in the intervening years, we've learned a lot about dark matter. We've learned about where it is and what it's doing. The distribution of dark matter, the fact that galaxies are embedded in these clumps of this invisible stuff. But we still don't know what it's made of. And there have been a lot of efforts to figure that out with dark matter detectors that have so far given only sort of ambiguous results, nothing really solid, saying that we've definitely found it. And then with other kinds of experiments and observations, trying to identify whatever it is this dark matter is made of, whether it's some kind of new particle or maybe, tiny black holes or something like that. And so right now, the situation is that we're having to be really creative and come up with new ideas for what dark matter could be, because we have failed to so far find solid evidence for any particular model. But that's an interesting place to be, because it means that we get to come up with new ideas and we get to try new creative ways to figure this all out.
And again, bringing the theoretical in your title, even more apparent, because, kind of knowing that it's out there, but then not knowing what it is, that seems very contrary to, I think, a lot of people that, if you can tell it's there and it's there, but you don't know what it's made of, that seems very contrary to, I guess, kind of human nature, because, you see a rock, you pick up a rock, you know what a rock is made of, made out of rock. That seems very contrary, I guess, to what most people know about the world around them.
Well, I think about it a lot like the wind, so if you go outside and, you see the trees sort of leaning over and you hear the rustling of leaves and, you feel a bit of a chill on one side of you and you see a plastic bag moving down the street and street signs waving, it's windy. You can't see the wind. Mm-hmm. But there are lots of little pieces of evidence that tell you that the wind is there. And long before anybody knew about, individual molecules of carbon, carbon dioxide and oxygen and nitrogen and all of those things, we knew that there was wind. And I think it's a very similar thing with dark matter. We have lots of different pieces of evidence for it. We see the effects of dark matter in many different ways. We can't see the dark matter itself. We don't know exactly what it's made of, but we have really good reason to believe it's there, just like you have really good reason to believe that all of these phenomena you see around you with the trees and the leaves and the chill on your body, those are probably associated with the same thing.
I gotcha. And of course, dark matter, even though we're still trying to figure it out, I guess how important would you say dark matter is? Because, for a while, black holes, they didn't think they were a thing. And then, but obviously, we discovered they were. And it turns out they're actually huge sources of stars and star generation, that kind of thing. black holes are very important. We didn't know about them forever. Do you think dark matter has almost the same implication, that it's kind of a fundamental necessity for the universe?
Well, most of the matter in the universe is dark matter. So something like 80 or 85% of the
That's a
matter in
lot.
the universe is
That's a
dark
lot.
matter. Yeah, so it's important from that perspective, but also it's sort of the structure upon which all of the stuff in the cosmos is built. You know, if you look at where the matter is in the universe, the visible matter, the luminous matter, is just kind of a sprinkling on top of the dark matter, and the dark matter is what allowed galaxies to form in the first place. So that extra gravity that they lend to the situation is very important for keeping galaxies together and for making it possible for things like our Milky Way galaxy to form when it did. So we wouldn't be here without dark matter it's kind of the glue holding structure together in the cosmos.
Very, very important. So, and to switch topics just a little bit from dark matter, great tangent, but at the same time, again, we're looking, if you're watching the video portion, we're looking at the end of everything, astrophysically speaking, and not exactly about dark matter, but about, I guess, the eventual end of the universe. And, this has obviously not happened, thankfully. These are theories, and I guess what you have been exploring. So let's see, where would be the best place? Best place to start would be, you said that you've been getting interested into, kind of how everything eventually kind of turns out. What about that question really intrigued you? Because as far as and this is just off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure that's a couple trillion years down the road.
Yeah, we're talking about the very, very distant future of the cosmos. I think the thing that makes it interesting to me is just that I want to know how it's all going to end. I mean, we know the universe had a beginning 13.8 billion years ago. The universe expanded from, this sort of very hot, dense state that we call the hot Big Bang, or the primordial soup of the cosmos, and it's been expanding ever since. And so it's kind of natural to wonder what'll happen next. Like, where will this story end? What's the final chapter like? And so what we can do is we can look at the way that the universe is evolving right now. We can look at what we know about the components of the universe, the physics that governs the evolution of the cosmos, and extrapolate to figure out what we think might happen in the future. And part of what makes it interesting is that there are still several possibilities that are consistent with our current data and our current theories. And they can look very different, and some of them are super dramatic, and some of them are much more sort of a slow fade situation. So
right.
There's a lot of fun stuff to explore in that direction.
Yeah, in our notes here, we have a question about, 5 different possibilities that I think that you could speak to. Yeah, and I think that'd be the kind of best way to go about it, because it's nice that there's not just one. Hey, we have choice. It's like choose your own adventure. So if you wouldn't mind, would you mind talking about the different possibilities?
Sure. So in the book, I go through 5 different possibilities, and they're not necessarily the only ways that the universe could possibly end, but they're the 5 things that are sort of most prevalent in the physics literature, the way that physicists and cosmologists talk about this stuff. So in the book, I start with the Big Crunch, which is the idea that the universe is currently expanding, but at some point it could stop and turn around, and the expansion could reverse, and everything could come crashing back together again, and we could end up back in that sort of hot fireball state of the cosmos that we know happened at the beginning. We think that's not very likely, but that's one of the situations that's been explored in the literature, and in the 1960s or so, that was considered to be the most likely end for the universe. Now we think it's going to go a different direction, because now when we look at the expansion of the universe, we can see that the expansion of the universe is speeding up. So it's not slowing down and coming to a stop. It's actually going faster. And that's due to something we call dark energy, very different from dark matter, not at all related as far as we know. dark energy is something that we also don't understand and also can't see, but it's something that makes the universe expand faster. We don't.
And sorry to step on you there, but it does kind of raise all those other questions I'm sure people have had before. Is, you're talking about rapidly expanding into what? That's one of the one of them.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I get all the time. If the universe is expanding, what's it expanding into? The short answer is we don't know if it's expanding into anything at all. We don't know if that's even a question that makes sense in the way the universe is set up. You can think of the universe as being everything there is, in which case there is nothing outside it. And then the question kind of doesn't work. Right. The universe could be infinite in size, in which case it's just getting bigger anyway, which is this thing that can happen mathematically, that you can have something that's infinite get more infinite. So that's another way where the question might not make sense. There's also a possibility that there is some kind of space outside of what we think of as the universe, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the universe is expanding into it. We could be expanding into our own space in some way. What we really see when we say the universe is expanding is we see that the spaces between distant galaxies are getting bigger. So we see more empty space all the time. In some sense, the density of things is going down over time. That's what we observe. And so that's what we can say when we say the universe is expanding, but we don't perceive any kind of edge. We don't see any evidence that there's an edge. The universe could be sort of closed around itself like the surface of a balloon, in which case that can expand without there being an edge to it. There are lots of different possibilities, and we don't have any evidence that there's something outside the universe to expand into. So all we can say really is that the spaces inside the universe are getting bigger.
Right, and of course, all the questions that you just answered. The other one is how fast is it expanding, or how fast are these gaps between the systems really increasing? Because if it's happening. Let's start there. How fast do we have like a speed that the universe is traveling?
So we can measure how quickly the spaces, how quickly things are moving away from each other, and the farther apart things are now, the faster they're moving apart. So that sort of makes sense. If the universe is expanding uniformly in every direction, like it's kind of like let's say you have like a slinky or something, and you stretch it between your hands so that the links get farther apart, right? The ones that were already really close together over the same amount of time only get like a half a centimeter apart or something. The ones that were on opposite sides of the slinky are now maybe a couple of feet apart when you stretch the slinky between your hands. So there's the farther apart things are already, the faster they're getting farther apart. That's just the way that it works with universal expansion. So what we can say is that if for a given distance now, we can say how far apart, how quickly things are expanding, and then for larger distances, it's going faster. So the number that we use is the rate of expansion is somewhere around 70 kilometers per second per megaparsec, where a megaparsec is 1 million parsecs and a parsec is like 3.2 light years or something like that. So there's a bit of space. These are large distances. Yeah, these are large distances, but there's a sort of rule of thumb that depends on how far apart things are already. And that's what we use to measure the speed of the expansion. But we do have measurements of that number. There's an interesting side note, which is that we have different kinds of ways of measuring the current expansion speed, and they don't currently agree with each other. So there's a bit of a mystery there in terms of what is the current expansion speed exactly, and is there some weirdness going on with the expansion speed locally versus far away or whatever. That's a whole other topic. But
and
measure this.
And of course, I'm sure that you can name better examples than I could. But think about. Very beginning of the universe with the Big Bang, they said that, and I'm going to reference an anonymous they, but essentially physics didn't work because there was so much heat, so much energy, so much explosion that like was in like a fraction of a second, the size of the universe went from like 0 to 80% of what it is now. Like physics didn't work there. Going into a black hole, physics kind of breaks down near a black hole. I mean, physics, like the laws that you're kind of going by, and we're going to get back to the different possibilities. Kind of saying that our current models agree with this. Things break down in extremes, and aren't we talking about one of the extremes, or are we, kind of still safely within the bounds of what we know? It's just going to kind of play out eventually how it will play out.
Do you mean for the expansion rate of the cosmos,
for the
or
expansion
future?
rate and the eventual end of everything by expansion?
Well, so for the expansion rate, the issue is not so much the change in the laws of physics in extreme circumstances. It's that it's very, very hard to measure distances in cosmic situations, because it's you see a distant galaxy, saying exactly how far away that is a complicated thing to do, and it's further complicated by the fact that the universe has been expanding all the time, that the light's been traveling to you, and it just gets very messy very quickly. But when it comes to the end of the universe, when it comes to the very beginning, we have to wrestle with the fact that the laws of physics are energy dependent, or temperature dependent, if you prefer to think of it that way. They depend on what's going on, like how hot a situation you're in at the time you measure them, how energetic the particles are that you're trying to measure. And so that's why we do things like smash particles together in particle colliders, because then we can reach energies where the laws of physics are a little bit different, and we can try and mimic the conditions just after the Big Bang, and see how the laws of physics are changing. And so that we run into some of that too, thinking about the end of the universe, especially some of the scenarios where things get really messy very fast.
So I have a question.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Krista, go ahead.
Sorry. I was wondering, so your particle colliders, right? That all makes sense. That's super cool and stuff. But what happens if your particle's too big and you make a tiny black hole in your particle collider, and then it sucks everything into it? Is that even a possibility?
That is not a possibility, as far as we know. So there are a couple of things to say about that, because this is something that people did worry about with the Large Hadron Collider. When that first turned on, everybody's like, well, we've never collided particles at this energy before. How do we know we're not going to somehow destroy the universe by accident? So we do think that there may be a chance of creating a very small black hole in a particle collider if the universe has more spatial dimensions than we currently can measure, there's a whole complicated thing around that. But one of the interesting possibilities for the universe is that there may be more dimensions than the 3 that we currently can perceive. Maybe there's some other direction that we don't understand, that space can extend into some other direction. And if that's the case, then it may be possible for particle colliders to create little black holes. But if they did, those little black holes would immediately evaporate, probably based on our understanding of how black holes work at those kind of scales. So the black hole would sort of explode or disappear. Also, it would be moving most likely at very high speeds away from the detector. So even if it were going to not evaporate immediately, it would suddenly be carried away to the very distant universe, by just the fact that it would not be created exactly at rest. So it would have some residual speed, and it would sort of go right through the detector and leave. But also, even if this thing were created, even if it could sit still, even if it didn't disappear immediately, these kinds of collisions are happening all the time in the upper atmosphere, from cosmic rays hitting particles in our atmosphere, from high energy particles throughout the universe slamming into things, from things hitting the surface of the moon, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of places where high energy particle collisions are already happening all the time, and none of those places have created something that swallows planets or destroys the universe. So we would have seen, if it were possible to create a little black hole that could eat the Earth with a particle collider, then it would have happened billions and billions of times over the years on the moon, and the moon has not been eaten by a black hole. So that's one of the. I was actually reading some papers about this when I was working on the book about these sort of disaster scenarios for these particle colliders. And one thing that they cite as evidence that this is not a problem is the fact that much higher energy collisions have happened on the moon for billions of years, and the moon is still there. So we can be reasonably confident that nothing our little machines here on Earth can do would be anywhere near harmful compared to what happens out there.
Awesome.
Thank you for putting us all at ease. And and the point that I was going to ask you was that just a couple of months ago, let's see, here's an article from 625, so about 2 months ago, talking about the successor to the Large Hadron Collider, which would be the Large Electron Positron Collider, or LEP, is looking to be built. I think they're hoping by like 2040, and they're looking for plenty of research funding to build this thing. But you may be the first one that we've had on the show that I can ask this. Why are they building this? And are you excited that, in your line of work, that they might build a 27-kilometer long version of the Large Hadron Collider?
Well, so there are a few possibilities for future colliders. There's that one, and then there's also the Future Circular Collider, which would be just a much larger version of the LHC, also in a sort of circular configuration instead of the linear one. So there are a few options for this, and I think that there are several reasons we want to do this. One is that we want to see if there will be new physics that we find at higher energies, because although collisions of particles out there in the cosmos can reach much higher energies than we have currently on Earth. We have a limit to how far we've gone with these experiments. And the hope is that when we collide things at higher energies, we will see different things. We will see different mixes of particles. We'll see clues to new physical processes that we didn't know about before that could help us develop better theories of particle physics. And one of the other motivations is just to better understand the particle physics that we already know about, sort of fill in the gaps in our current theories, especially around things related to the Higgs boson, which is this particle that the Large Hadron Collider found, which was it's sometimes people used to call it the God particle. It's this particle associated with the Higgs field, which is this sort of energy field that pervades all of space and had something to do with particles getting mass in the early universe. So the Higgs field is something that sort of determines how particle physics works, and we would like to understand that much better. So some of these future colliders could give us very interesting information about the Higgs field, about the Higgs boson, about how particle physics really fits together. And so, it's natural to want to, reach those higher energies to do those new experiments and try and fill in what we don't yet know about how physics works in those situations.
I gotcha. So, and that was a huge tangent. That's getting back to the original question, were the multiple different scenarios that we see at the end of the universe. Again, one of them is a recollapse, although that doesn't seem to be, kind of what most people think are going to happen. The second one was the eventual expansion. And if you want to, kind of wrap that one up or move on to the next one.
Yeah. So if the universe is not going to recollapse, if it does continue expanding forever, then that can lead us eventually to what we call the heat death, which is where just everything sort of fades away, more or less. The universe gets more and more diffuse. There's fewer stars are forming, and everything's getting more and more distant. And the universe kind of fades away in this cold, dark, empty, lonely emptiness.
So, and
called the heat death.
I think that a lot of people know cold, but I don't think they know the cold that you're talking about. What do you mean heat death?
So heat death, the term heat death comes from the fact that that what's really happening is as everything decays, the universe is left with all that's left in it is sort of the waste heat of the cosmos, like just the sort of leftover energy as everything decays. And so the term heat there is that kind of sort of more of a technical physics term for disordered energy. But in terms of the temperature, it's extremely close to absolute zero at that point. Everything really kind of cools down and fades away, and all of the energy in the universe gets dispersed into a much larger space. So it ends up being there's basically nothing left.
And I know that we're talking about a time scale that obviously in the last, I don't know, 7-10,000 years of human civilization, we're totally going to see the next trillion years. But at the end of the trillion years of any society or any culture or anything living, is there a way to survive even that, or is that literally just it?
Here on Earth, we have maybe 1 billion years before Earth is no longer habitable because the sun sort of bakes the surface away. Assuming
Fine.
that we can leave the Earth's surface and live somewhere else and continue there for a long time. At some point, the fact that the stars are burning out is going to be a problem, right? So there will be fewer sources of energy, and we don't have that long until stars are really fading away and star formation is really slowing down. You got hundreds of billions of years, but not trillions. Once you get to that point, then you're really having some trouble finding energy sources. There could be there'll be dead stars that are fading for a very long time, so you can do something with that for a while. But eventually there will be a point where there's just no usable energy and all your matter is decayed away, and there's really nothing you can do. So there will be a point when it is impossible for the processes of life or intelligence to continue. But it's a very long time from now.
Yeah, I'm glad that you and really in your line of work, do you have to kind of qualify or kind of quantify yourself like that every time it's saying everything's going to die and there's nothing we can do about it, but it's not for a while? Like, do you find yourself tacking on that little bit of hopefulness?
Yeah, and it gets complicated too, because not all of the end of the universe scenarios are necessarily that far in the future. In the sense that there are possibilities for earlier endings, and these are extremely remote possibilities, and still not anything to worry about. But there does come a point where I have to say, well, we can't say for sure it's not going to happen soon.
Let's try that. Let's try to speed run the universe. What is the kind of the thing we should worry about most?
Well, okay, the thing we should worry about most is climate change, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, we should not worry about the end of the universe at all. There's no reason to ever worry about this, partially because there's nothing you can do about it. But also, it's not the kind of thing that we should be spending our time being scared of. But the one that does scare people on the internet, and I get a lot of emails from people saying that they're very worried about this, is called vacuum decay. And the idea behind vacuum decay is sort of that there's an instability built into the fabric of space itself. There's an instability built into how physics works in our universe. And that means that the universe is susceptible to that instability being triggered and destroying the universe. So this comes back to the Higgs field, which I mentioned before. So there's this energy field that pervades all of space, and it has something to do with how particles got mass in the early universe. It's an energy field that has kind of a value in space, and that value determines how physics works. It determines how particles interact with each other. It determines how the forces of nature work, the fundamental constants of nature, all that stuff. It's determined by where the Higgs field is, what it's doing. And in the very early universe, the Higgs field had a different value. Physics worked differently. We had different particles. We didn't have atoms and molecules because you couldn't have those things based on what the Higgs field was set at the early universe. Then it changed. Now we have our normal physics. We can have chemistry and all that. We can have life. That's great. So we want it to stay what it is. But based on our measurements of the Higgs boson, of the particles, in particle physics, we have reason to believe that maybe the current value of the Higgs field is not like the most stable value, that the Higgs field could change. And if it did, it would, and if the Higgs field changed, we would not be able to exist. So we don't want that to happen. And we have some reason to believe maybe it could happen. And the way it would happen would be a quantum tunneling event somewhere in space. And we cannot predict if quantum tunneling will happen, when it will happen. It's one of these things. Quantum tunneling is something that's it happens all the time. It's this idea that if you have, let's say you have an electron on one part of a microchip, and you sit around long enough, that electron might jump to the other side of the microchip through a barrier, just randomly, just because it's a quantum process and you can't predict that. And these things just happen, and you have to plan for that when you're building microchips, when you're doing, building electronics. You have to take it into account for flash memory, all these kinds of things. And it's even used in microscopes. There's tunneling electron microscopes that are built around the idea that electrons sometimes show up in places that you didn't expect. So quantum tunneling is totally a thing that happens, and it's an unpredictable thing. We don't know. We can put timescales on it. We can say that if you have an electron on your microchip, you should expect that, within maybe a year it'll show up on the other side, but you don't know exactly when it'll happen. And similarly with the universe, every point in the Higgs field, there's some chance that the tunneling event will occur. And if it does, it'll change the value of the Higgs field. And if that happens, then that change will spread. So it'll create a little bubble of a different kind of space where the Higgs field has a different value and particle physics works differently and all atoms can't hold together anymore. And that bubble will expand through the universe at the speed of light, roughly, and just destroy everything because nothing can exist inside that bubble. So we think that might be possible.
At least it didn't behave like the particle versus the wave, and actually measuring it would change the value or the way that it behaved. At least the Higgs boson wasn't like that. Like as soon as someone said, "Oh, that's what you are," it snapped and we all died. So that's good.
Yeah, and we don't think there's any way to trigger vacuum decay. We think that it's something that really would just be a random process that could happen, but the time scale we put on it, we expect it won't happen for something like 10 to the power of 100 years, right? So a very, very, very long time from now.
So that's a built-in
process.
Again, sorry to stop you, but that's just like a built-in, one in an infinite D&D roll, like a critical fail, just everything just collapses because it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And you can't predict for sure when it would happen or where it would happen. You can say that it's extraordinarily unlikely it would happen anytime in the next 10 to the power of 100 years. But because it's random, you really can't say for certain. And so that's something that people do worry about sometimes because it is this uncertain thing.
Well, we have this question here about, is it going to hurt? And I guess that can go for all of the different scenarios you've already laid out. But, like you said, there's worrying about it. But I mean, you're going to notice a 2 degrees Celsius increase in the atmosphere way more than a random vacuum collapse.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about vacuum decay is it would be totally painless. You wouldn't see it coming. Because it happens at about the speed of light, you can't possibly see it coming because by the time the light from it gets to you, it's already there. So you don't see it approaching if this bubble is coming for us. You don't feel it because your nerve impulses don't travel that fast. So if it does sort of hit you, you won't know by the time you're over. So it is painless. You kind of wouldn't notice. It would be sort of inconsequential. It would destroy everything. There's no tragic aftermath. It's just everything kind of just erased. But the main reason that I think people shouldn't worry about it, I think the main reason people shouldn't worry about it is there's nothing we can do about it, and it wouldn't hurt anyway. But the other reason you shouldn't worry about it is we don't even know for sure if this is a thing that can happen. And based on our understanding of particle physics, we're pretty sure that there's some other theory of physics that will replace our current understanding of particle physics. And in that theory, it may be that vacuum decay is just totally impossible. So we don't know. And also, the chance of it happening in the lifetime of our planet is so tiny. It's one of these things where it's like you're much more likely to be, hit by a meteor and lightning at the same time while winning the lottery than you are to be affected by vacuum decay, and by many, many orders of magnitude. So it's one of these things. It's just not worth worrying about, but it's a very fascinating possibility if you happen to be a physicist. So I really enjoy working on it and thinking about the implications of it. But yeah, don't lose any sleep.
I gotcha. And this other topic that we had here, so you've already laid out 3 different ones, and this is something I've never heard of, although you explore in your book about the concept of cosmic dawn and reionization, if that's how you say that. What are these? Because it sounds cool.
So these don't really have anything to do with the end of the universe, but these are just sort of epochs in our current in our epochs in the timeline of our cosmos that happened in the past that we're just starting to learn about. So reionization and cosmic dawn, this is the time when like the first stars were turning on. And the cool thing about this is that we are just now able to actually get information about that. We have new telescopes being built that can see some of the first galaxies, that can see the gas from which the first stars were formed, and watch that kind of progress by looking so far into the distance that we're looking back in time to the first billion years of the universe. And that's one of the things that I work on in my research, is trying to understand what happened there, what the first stars and galaxies were like, and how they might have been affected by things like dark matter. So there's a lot of really fascinating research into that area right now.
So, and kind of like going back to your hometown, going by and kind of looking at the house that you grew up in, I mean, is it just like well, obviously there's the innate, these are the infinite questions we've always had, where we come from and that kind of thing, but is there what is driving this need to find universes from the first billion years of galaxies from the first billion years of the universe? What's driving? Is it simply those kind of questions about how did everything start, or is there something that we can kind of apply to our understanding of science, or is it everything?
I mean, my interest in this stuff is really just trying to understand how the universe works. I think that by looking at these early galaxies, we might learn something about fundamental physics, about how dark matter works, about how the laws of nature determine how structure forms, where we come from. I think that's a fascinating question. And with a lot of these questions, it's not the kind of thing, this research is not the sort of thing that's going to, lead to cars that drive faster. This is not applied research, but as fundamental research, as kind of blue sky thinking, it's super useful in ways that we can't predict yet. So there's a lot of there's just a huge history of physics that nobody saw any application to becoming absolutely essential in the future. I mean, I already mentioned quantum tunneling. This is an obscure thing that happens in quantum physics that seems like it couldn't possibly be useful, and now we have microscopes built on it. Now we build it into our flash memory and things like that. Quantum mechanics, general relativity, we use all the time with GPS, stuff like that. So we don't know what we're going to learn about physics, about the universe, that might be useful in the future. We don't know what the return on investment it will be, but we do know that in the past, it's always been incredibly useful, incredibly important to just study physics for the sake of physics, for the sake of curiosity. And then, a lot of really important things come out of that.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I study it because it's interesting. I find it fascinating. And I think that we are a curious species, and we are interested in our origins and our fate as people, as beings in the cosmos. And so we study this stuff because we just want to know.
I have to give you credit though, because I think a lot of really everyone should be interested in this, but not everyone goes to school for 8-10 years to to be able to find the answers. And by the way, I just gotta say that about once a year we have IBM on the show to talk about their work with quantum computers, and hearing about what they're having to tackle and how far they've come in even just 5, 6, 7 years. even just, let's say, the idea of miniaturization. Like the first time we did the show, the scientist brought a webcam into the facility, and the quantum computer was the entire room that he was doing the interview from. And just this last one, we were talking about, I think it was like Quantum One or whatever IBM is selling nowadays. And yeah, they're selling it. It's about the size of a shipping container. It's a large thing, but yeah, you could put one in the basement of your building. Yeah, it's come a long way very quickly.
Yeah, I was able to visit a quantum computing facility a little while ago, and it was really fascinating. But yeah, it was just a huge room full of these,
tubes,
shipping container sized objects, and the technology behind these things is fascinating. But it's going to be a while before they're sort of in everybody's living rooms, I think.
Well, and that's something else that we've talked about with other people before. And odds are, the whole terminal system that we've kind of moved away from, odds are no one's going to have a quantum computer, but everyone's going to have access to one. That's the dream. You don't have to maintain it yourself, but you get to use one.
Some kind of cloud thing.
Yeah, that quantum cloud. There you go. Marketing idea 101. So with that being said, looking at some of the other questions we have here, could you outline just kind of, and we talked about 5, and of course people should go out there and read the book, to find out more of these, because I'm sure that you flesh it out completely. But so you've outlined like 3. Is there any other ones that you wanted to just kind of say, hey, here's something that may interest you?
So I think so I've talked about 3 of them now. The other 2 are also some of the most speculative ideas. So one of them is the idea that the universe might kind of rip itself apart through expanding a little bit too energetically, something called the Big Rip. So that's a cool one. And then I also talk about cyclic universe ideas. So something where the universe could go through an end of the universe that leads into a new beginning, and you can have cycles where the universe is constantly kind of reborn out of the ashes of a previous universe. And some people really like that idea because they find it hopeful. But it's something that we think about in physics because it might give us some insight into the sort of early universe and where we all came from. So there are some cool possibilities.
It's and I one more completely off topic kind of thing, but I got to say that you're giving your stamp of approval to reincarnation. That's the answer. So good to know.
No.
Okay, fine. But I got to say that is much more hopeful than kind of everything just dying a horrible little cold death. Now, I got to say that one thing that was, kind of not on topic, but one that comes up here on the show because we are a technology show, and I wanted to know if you had any insight into this, just real quick, and then we're going to wrap it up, and we'll tell everyone links and where to find this and all that good stuff. But are we in a simulation? I know that's not anything to do with what we're talking about, but what do you think?
So I think that my feeling about this is if we are in a simulation, it kind of doesn't matter because let's say that somebody is setting the rules of the universe such that when we do our experiments, we find the rules that somebody else has set, and then we are we're doing new experiments, we're finding consistency there, we're working under these rules. It kind of doesn't make a difference if those rules are set by this is just the fundamental nature of the universe, or if these rules were set in somebody's code, in some larger space or whatever. I mean, my feeling is, the universe has passed its Turing test, right? Like there's no perceivable difference between a universe that's a simulation that's so good that it's a functional universe that we live in versus a universe that is just a functional universe that we live in. So it's hard for me to get super excited about simulation ideas because I don't see how it would change anything about what we observe, how we determine the laws of physics, and I don't see that we would necessarily ever have access to anything else if we saw things in that way. So So,
Part of me-
maybe, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Part of me feels like it's almost like that control aspect, that there is that higher being, and then there is, of course, maybe some kind of egotistical thing that we can hijack it. We can take control of the Matrix. It'll be fun. But that is again totally off tangent. If you want to get back on tangent, the end of everything astrophysically speaking, Dr. Katie Mack, and I think we're gonna wrap it up there. But if people want to find out more, where would you say is the best place to go, and where should they pre-order your book?
Yeah, so the book is out now, so you can order it anywhere or anywhere you find books. You can find it at bookstores if you have one that's open near you. It's also an ebook, it's an audiobook, so like it's in libraries. The book is out there. And you can find out more about it at my website, astrokatie.com. You can find me on Twitter at astrokatie. I'm kind of all over the internet, so yeah.
Absolutely. And hey, everyone, we'll have links to that, and of course, we'll send those out as much as we can. But I got to say that I knew this would be a very fun conversation, and thank you so much for the time that you were able to give us. I'm sure that this went long, but hey, I had a lot of fun, and it was great talking to you.
Yeah, good to talk to you too. Thank you very much for having me on.
Our pleasure. And Carissa? Oh,
I said thanks, Katie.
Yeah, absolutely. And so until next time, everyone, again, computeramerica.com will have a link. And Katie, we're going to very unceremoniously kick you out of the call. But yeah, thank you so much. And hey, we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. All right, everyone. And there we go. If you want to find out more, hey, astrokatie.com/book or wherever books are sold. Books a Million, still a thing. Who knew? But I spent a lot of time, Carissa, I spent a lot of time at Books a Million with my brother when we were younger, because we used to play chess there. And we were pretty good for young kids, but at the same time, there were some regulars who were just
so rude.
Huge.
So rude in the Books a Million.
Yeah, well, no, it's not that they were rude. It's just that they were so much better than us kids, that they just like pub stomp, I guess would be the best phrase to use. It was not pretty, but anyways, there you go. Carissa, you have gathered a number of stories that unfortunately we probably won't have time to get to all of them, because we have like 7 or 8 minutes, but I will let you kind of decide for me and for us and the audience which one of these really stood out to you, and we'll go ahead and cover that.
Well, some of these were kind of like what we were talking about yesterday with Darush.
With Darius, yeah?
Yeah, it was CNEX, sorry. AMC reopening theaters today with 15-cent tickets.
Let's talk about that, because that's something that I had heard as well. And I think people need to know about this, because obviously COVID not over, but at the same time, man, AMC would love you to think so. And this is their way of kind of doing it. This and in my head, this was the deal with the devil that they had to make, Carissa, where obviously Mulan came into people's homes. There were a number of other movies that are looking to do the exact same thing. The deal with the devil was that the huge, massive union that is the Movie Theaters Workers Association, or whatever it's called, they said, okay, you can release your film and start making some money, but when we finally reopen, you have to let us play it for free. And I think that was the deal that they kind of made, and we'll go ahead and talk about this in a little more detail, but I did find this one very interesting. So everyone, this is a story just from yesterday, but they're saying that AMC is celebrating its 100th year. I had no idea AMC was so ancient. But yeah, 100th year by reopening theaters across the nation. And on Thursday, after closing down because of coronavirus pandemic, to celebrate its anniversary for one day only, tickets will be 15 cents a piece. Due to 15 cents a piece, which back in 1920, when they first got started, they were 15 cents. So, okay, it was not the deal with the devil. I insinuated it all. That is not the truth. It turns out it's actually a throwback, and it's just for one day. So some of the movies being shown on the 15-cent day include throwbacks like Inception, Black Panther, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Grease, and Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Once the 100th anniversary pricing concludes, the movies will be priced at $5 per ticket. So I guess they're going to stay open and offer reduced rates for movies that, hey, odds are, you probably didn't see one of these in theater. I'm not saying that you didn't see at least one of these you didn't see. So maybe your chance to see Back to the Future on the big screen. The reopening of the first step in AMC's phase plan for the U.S. aims to have 600 theaters, or 2/3 of its operations, open by September 3rd. Carissa, I never really asked you your opinion on this whole COVID thing and reopening, but would you be comfortable with this?
If they were, as it goes on, I'm becoming probably more comfortable than I should be, but I wear my mask.
Desensitized.
And it's been so many months now. If it was distanced well enough and they were keeping it clean, you can't really confirm that. They can only say what they want to say. It could be completely filthy. I have no idea. I would probably do it if the movie was good enough for $5 a ticket, for 15 cents a ticket.
I mean,
absolutely.
If your shoes still stick to the floor,
then you're getting your experience's worth.
But I'm saying that they probably didn't clean for COVID, is all I'm saying. Although I will say that transmission of COVID on solid surfaces, very, very rare. So although I guess in like movie seats where like you're putting your drink down and touching your face and eating popcorn, things like that, maybe if they didn't sell...
down, but you don't need to like mop the floor every day. Well, they don't do that anyway. But
yeah, maybe just cleaning the seats. But I got to say that maybe if they didn't sell concessions, although at that point, why would a movie theater exist? Because, that's how they make money. So
I went to the drive-in recently, and I watched. What did I watch? I watched Inside Out, and I watched Talladega Nights, and I watched Black Panther in succession. I went to the drive-in; it was super cool. But they were also selling concessions, which was like mind-boggling to me. But they were, they gave you the little pamphlet, and they were like, it's really important that we do this because this is how we make our money. Because people just sit here all night and watch movies. So, I mean, if the drive-in has to do it to survive, the movie theater is probably going to have to do it to survive.
Movie theaters make almost no money showing movies, and actually in some cases, such as the most recent Disney with the whole Star Wars thing, the episode 8 and 9, they. Like, Disney said, if you want to show our movie, you have to put it on, 4 of your biggest screens for the next, 3 months. And, of course, if they didn't agree to that, then they didn't get the rights to show the movie. So it's like, what movie theater can afford to not put on the latest show? But at the same time, even if you're in a podunk town and the entire movie theater is dedicated to Disney for the end, for the next 3 months, and they refuse to earn money, movie theaters make no money due to tickets. They only make it through concessions. So
interesting.
That's pretty widely known. And in some cases, they can actually lose money because of these big deals. So
ooh.
Yeah, there's that one. Okay, so there's that one. Looking for
the next one, the mech suit.
The mech suit, sure. And by the way, I just gotta say that the story that you picked out, where Razer's looking to, kind of take off some of its RGB sleekness and just make a casual, a casual foray into the business world. I've already reached out to them. We're probably going to get some product, and I'm hoping to get them on the show. The company that they partnered with, Human Scale, has actually agreed to be on the show. So they
awesome.
should be on the show here sometime soon. So ergonomics, it's an exciting topic. So instead, in the last 2 minutes that we have, and it's literally 2 minutes, we're going to do a real life mech suit. And
yes!
So
I'm so excited.
So the mech suit and the power loader, for those of you who don't know, I think the power loader that they're talking about is anything from Avatar to Alien to any of these movies where it's like a forklift that you essentially sit inside and it works like a mini robot. Someone actually made it. And if you're watching the video portion, you can actually see what this thing looks like. Short answer, it looks like a little stubby elephant, I guess, would be a not inaccurate way to describe this thing. And it's very, I guess, kind of cute. It's metal scaffolding all around it. It is it's crushing cars, picking things up. It's actually pretty mobile for what it is. And let's go ahead and talk about this real quick because we have in under a minute. Many exoskeletons are wearable machines that augment human strength, but this is by the Furion Exo Bionics prosthesis is a 9,000-pound quadruped, four-legged machine that can lift a car, climb over boulders, and run in the snow. But they say that the ultimate goal is to pioneer mech racing. Yes, we've all seen a million anime that have this exact premise, and Gundam is becoming more and more realistic. Prosthesis has been in development for over 10 years, and the professional athlete to sit in the driver's seat was Casey Harish, a Canadian champion skeleton racer. During an intense 3-day training session, they said that she managed to take a step in the quadruped that was like a monument event for us, but it also fell flat on Prosthesis' face a couple times. That was hilarious and terrifying. Essentially, they built a roll cage and then they built legs and arms and all that kind of stuff to go around it. Carissa, that's very cool, and I'm guessing you want one.
I would like one, but also it might get me into sports if they do start racing them like that. That's pretty freaking cool.
Absolutely. We had another one where a guest came on the show to talk about theirs, where they put everyone in like full suits of like body armor that would detect pressure and hits and things like that. And then they were going to let them gladiator it out with different weapons and things like that. I mean, technology and the future of sports, like, we don't know what's going to work yet, but there are people doing some really cool things, including building 9,000-pound robots to eventually race around in. Carissa, that's today's show. I think it went really well.
I think so too. It's a good show.
Absolutely, absolutely. So everyone out there, we're out of time. ComputerAmerica.com, ComputerAmerica.com, ComputerAmerica.com. Have a great one. We'll catch you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.